It was a regular Tuesday afternoon when the package showed up. Brown box, medium size, left on my porch. I picked it up, glanced at the label, and saw her name, Sarah. Apartment 2B. She'd moved in a couple of months ago. I'd only spoken to her twice. Polite greetings in the hallway, a few words about the weather. That was it. I didn't think much about it. I figured I'd just drop it off at her door. Simple. But when I knocked, she opened the door almost immediately, like she'd been standing on the other side. She wore a fitted tank top, loose joggers that hung low on her hips, barefoot. Her hair was up, messy, but deliberate. She looked relaxed. Or, at least like she wanted to seem that way. "Oh, thank you," she said, reaching for the package. I was wondering where this ended up. "No problem," I said. "It was just on my porch." She looked at me for a moment. "You want to come in for a sec?" I was just about to have a drink. "It's just sparkling water, nothing fancy." I hesitated. I didn't have a reason to say no. "Sure," I said. Her apartment was neat but lived in. Candles burned in the corner. A soft, clean scent hung in the air. She motioned for me to sit and handed me a glass. We talked. Not about anything deep at first. Work, weather, noise complaints. But then the tone shifted. She asked if I lived alone. "No, married," I said. She nodded. "That's nice. How long?" 8 years. She raised an eyebrow, smiled faintly. Impressive. You don't hear that a lot anymore. I asked about her. She was married too. Her tone changed when she said it. "Yeah, he works a lot. Travels. It's mostly just me here." We sat in silence for a moment. Not awkward, but waited. Her eyes lingered. I sipped the drink. "You always this nice to neighbors?" she asked, half smiling. I laughed lightly. "Only the ones I'm a little afraid of." She tilted her head. "Afraid? You've got this look like you know exactly what someone's thinking. Kinda dangerous." She laughed, low, confident. "That's a new one." The moment stretched. Too long. I stood. "I should get going. Thanks for the drink." "Anytime," she said, voice softer now. "My door's always open." I walked out feeling strange. Off balance. Like I'd missed something, or maybe narrowly avoided it. Back home, my wife was cooking. She didn't look up when I came in. "You pick up the mail?" "Yeah," I said. "Nothing important." Dinner was quiet. We sat across from each other, chewing in silence. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, typed something, put it down. I watched her. She didn't notice. Later, in bed, I scrolled through my phone. I kept thinking about the way Sarah looked at me. Not lustfully, more curious. Like she'd already read my intentions and was waiting for me to catch up. My wife turned her back to me and sighed. Not annoyed, just tired. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, the flickering thoughts looping through my head. The next day, I saw her again. She was walking her dog. She waved. I waved back. Just a wave. But something lingered in her eyes. Something open. After that, I started noticing her more. Which days her car was gone, what time she walked her dog, when she brought groceries in. I'd tell myself I wasn't looking. But I was. Always. A few days later, another package came. This one smaller. She wasn't home. I held on to it. Didn't leave it at her door. That evening, I walked over. Knocked again. She opened the door in a hoodie and shorts. Hair wet. "Oh," she said, eyes lighting up. "I was wondering if you had that." I handed it to her. "Thought I'd make sure you got it directly." She leaned on the doorframe. "Thanks. Want to come in for a sec?" I did. This time we talked more. She asked about my job. I told her more than I usually told anyone. She listened like she cared. Not just waiting for her turn to speak, actually listening. When I left, it was dark. I didn't realize how late it had gotten. My wife asked where I'd been. I said I was helping a neighbor with something. Not a lie, but not the truth either. That night, I dreamed about Sarah. Nothing happened in the dream. We just sat there, closer than we should have been. Talking. Laughing. And it felt like something I'd been missing for a long time. The next morning, I looked at my wife and felt distant. She was still asleep, curled up on her side, breathing steady. I used to watch her like that and feel warm. Now I just felt separate. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong, that I wouldn't, that this was just attention, harmless attention. A little spark in the monotony. That's all. But I didn't stop thinking about her. And that spark didn't go away. I started noticing how often we crossed paths. Morning jogs, trash runs, late evening walks. Sometimes it felt like coincidence. Other times, like choreography. We'd stop to talk, always casual, always short, but every time it lingered a little longer. She asked more questions. I gave more answers. I told her things I hadn't said out loud in years. Like how my marriage felt quiet lately. How everything at home felt like a schedule. Predictable. Sterile. She nodded like she understood. Told me her husband was working overseas. Said he was gone for weeks at a time. Said she was used to being alone but that lately, it had started to feel heavier. We started texting. It began simple, questions about deliveries, weekend plans, a shared meme. Then it shifted. Jokes turned into late-night messages. Messages turned into long conversations about nothing and everything. The tone changed. She'd say something like, "That your wife doesn't appreciate your dry humor." And I'd respond with something too honest like, "She hasn't laughed at anything I've said in years." One night, she sent a photo. Not provocative, just her on the couch, legs folded under her, wine glass in hand. The caption said, "This couch is too big for one." I stared at it longer than I should have. Typed something. Erased it. Then typed again. "Maybe I'll swing by sometime and help fix that." She replied with a single emoji. The one with the raised eyebrow. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every sound in the house felt louder. Every breath my wife took beside me felt like static. I kept replaying that message. That photo. That not quite a joke flirtation that didn't feel harmless anymore. The next morning, I told myself I'd pull back. But I didn't. The next time we ran into each other outside, we talked longer. We both laughed more. She told me about a fight she had with her husband over FaceTime. She said, "He doesn't even ask how my day was anymore." I didn't say anything for a second. Then I said, "Maybe he's just used to thinking you're okay without him." She looked at me a little differently after that. From then on, it was unspoken, but obvious. We started creating reasons to be around each other. She'd text and say she needed help moving a shelf. I'd find excuses to walk the dog at the exact time she did. She'd ask if I wanted to grab coffee during her lunch break. I always said yes. Every small interaction felt like stacking bricks towards something heavier. At home, things were colder. My wife had started asking less, not more. Less about where I was going, what I was doing. It was like she could feel me slipping and didn't want to acknowledge it. That kind of silence is worse than yelling. It felt like permission. One night Sarah invited me over late. Just said, "I've got wine. Could use some company." No pressure. I stared at the message. Typed, erased. Then I just went. When I got there, she opened the door slowly. Dim lights. Soft music. Same scent in the air. She looked at me like I was already inside. We talked for a long time. She told me more about her marriage, how it had been dead for over a year, but neither of them admitted it. How she didn't want to be the one to leave because leaving meant she lost. I told her how it felt to sleep beside someone who didn't turn toward me anymore. How I hadn't been touched in months. She touched my hand when I said that. Just lightly. A trace. It stayed longer than it needed to. We didn't kiss that night. But we could have. We both knew it. It was the first time I'd wanted to cross that line so badly I could feel my pulse in my throat. But I didn't. I left. My heart felt like it stayed behind. The next day, she texted me a simple, "Last night meant something." I stared at the screen for a long time. Reread it 10 times. Then I replied, "It did." From that moment on, everything shifted. Every message carried weight. Every glance when we passed in the hallway felt hotter. Every time I saw her, I had to fight the urge to reach out. One afternoon, I was home early. My wife had taken the kids to her sister's. I got a text.
Alone.
You? My reply was immediate.
Yeah.
We didn't say anything else. I walked over. She opened the door and didn't speak. I stepped inside. We stood there in silence, the air between us dense, full of things we weren't saying. Then she touched my face. Just gently. Her hand lingered. I took a step back. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did. Too much. I should go, I said, my voice low. She didn't say anything, just nodded. But her eyes stayed locked on mine. When I left, I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to breathe. My hands shook. I wasn't sure if it was restraint or weakness that pulled me back. That night, my wife didn't ask where I'd been. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, picturing Sarah's hand on my face. The way her eyes didn't flinch. The way she didn't need to speak for me to understand exactly what she wanted. And I realized something. I had already cheated. Not with my body, but in my head. In the way I thought about her. In the way I looked forward to her messages more than coming home. In how I started thinking about what shirt I wore if I thought I might see her. In how her voice lived in my head even when she wasn't there. I told myself I'd stop. That I had to. But I also knew I wouldn't. The message came late. Rough night. Can't sleep. Just that. No context. I didn't ask for any. I just replied, "Want me to come over?" A pause. Then, yeah. I didn't overthink it. I didn't plan. I walked over, because something in me already knew this was the moment we'd been circling for weeks. I knocked softly. She opened the door without a word, stepped aside, let me in. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. She didn't try to explain. She just walked to the couch and sat down. I followed. We didn't speak at first. She leaned into me like she needed it, and I let her. Her head on my shoulder, the silence between us growing more intimate by the second. Her hand found mine. I didn't pull away. Neither of us had to say what this was. It was already understood. Then she looked up at me. Her face was inches from mine. Her eyes weren't asking. They were telling. When she kissed me, it was slow, soft, like she was testing the edges of something sacred. I kissed her back. There was no hesitation after that. No more tension or wondering. Every moment had led here. My hands were on her waist, her arms around my neck. It was like we both needed to erase the loneliness we'd been carrying for too long. The way she held me wasn't desperate, it was sure. She knew what she wanted.
So did I.
When it happened, it wasn't rushed or frantic. It was quiet, drawn out. Every touch felt like an answer to a question we'd never dared to ask out loud. She moved with intention, like she'd imagined it just like this. We didn't speak through it. There were only sounds, her breath, my heartbeat, the tension finally breaking open. Nothing about it felt reckless. It felt inevitable. Afterward, we lay there without speaking. Her head rested against my chest. Her fingers traced circles on my skin. I didn't feel guilt in that moment. I felt relief. I felt seen. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, wanted. But the silence that followed began to shift. She pulled the blanket up, turned slightly away. I could feel the space return, the awareness settling in. I sat up, dressed slowly, not saying anything.
She didn't ask me to stay.
When I got home, the lights were off. The house was still. My wife was asleep in bed, facing the wall. I lay beside her, trying to mimic normal breathing. But everything felt loud. My thoughts, my heartbeat, the weight of what I'd done. Not because it felt wrong, because it felt like the first real thing in a long time. In the days that followed, it didn't stop. If anything, it became easier. The messages got bolder, shorter, less disguised. Come over. I miss your mouth. Same time tonight? Every time I got one, it was like adrenaline. We weren't hiding. Not really. Just avoiding being seen. Her husband was still out of town. My wife, was still detached, emotionally somewhere else. I started spending less time at home, finding excuses to work late, to run errands that didn't need running. She didn't question it. She had her routines, her distractions, her indifference. One night, Sarah whispered, "Do you think about her when you're here?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was I didn't. Not during. Only before. Only after. She rolled onto her back, stared at the ceiling. "Sometimes I wonder if this is all I'm ever going to be to you." I looked at her, said quietly, "You're the only thing that feels real right now." She closed her eyes, nodded. "That's not the same as saying I matter." I didn't have a response. We kept going anyway. The next time we were together, it was faster, more desperate. Like we were both afraid it might be the last time. She kissed me like she wanted to hurt me. I let her, but the edge started creeping in. She became more distant in texts. Took longer to reply. Sometimes didn't reply at all. When I asked if something was wrong, she'd say, "Just tired." Or, "Busy with work."
But I knew the tone had changed.
Eventually, she canceled on me. Said her husband was coming back earlier than expected. Said she needed space. That word, space, it hit harder than I expected. I told her I understood. I didn't. I waited. Days passed. I stopped hearing from her. The silence was worse than guilt. Worse than suspicion. It felt like being dropped in the middle of something I never meant to fall into. I drove past her building more than once. Walked by her door without knocking. I saw her once from across the parking lot. She was with him, holding hands, smiling.
She didn't see me.
Or maybe she did and chose not to react. Back home, things hadn't changed. My wife didn't ask where I'd been or why I seemed distracted. We moved through routines like clockwork. Empty words, half smiles. I lay next to her at night and stared into the dark, wondering how something that felt so intense could disappear so completely. I thought about texting Sarah, about telling her I missed her, that I didn't know how to go back to pretending. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there in that silence, replaying every moment I could remember. Every laugh, every glance, every time she touched me like I was the only person in the world. I thought about how it started with a box. One misplaced package. One invitation. And now here I was, sitting in the middle of a life that didn't feel like mine anymore. Weeks passed. I didn't see her. Not in the hallway, not outside, not even through the window. Her car was there sometimes, gone other times. I never knocked. I couldn't. I didn't trust what I'd do if she opened the door. My mind kept circling that final look she gave me, detached, polite, like none of it had ever happened. Like I was just another mistake she didn't have to own. I started questioning if I imagined the connection. If maybe, for her, it had been convenience. A way to fill time, feel something, then let it go. For me, it was more than that. But admitting that made it worse. At home, everything resumed its usual rhythm. My wife and I existed next to each other, not with each other. She asked fewer questions, offered no suspicion. Her silence was a cushion for my guilt. The problem was, the guilt wasn't about what I did. It was about how easy it was to live with it. One morning, my wife made coffee and left mine on the counter, like always. I stood there watching it cool. I realized I'd become someone I wouldn't trust. Someone who had a life others thought was intact, but had been quietly dismantling it piece by piece. And still, no one noticed. Then one afternoon, I saw her again.
Sarah.
She was unlocking her door, headphones in. She didn't see me, or pretended not to. I stood there, waiting. She opened the door, stepped in, and closed it without looking back. It took everything in me not to follow. I didn't. That night, I drank alone. Not a lot. Just enough to turn thoughts into confessions. I opened my messages, found her name. Typed, "I think about you all the time." Deleted it. Then typed again. "I'm not okay." Deleted that too. I turned the phone off. The next day, she texted me for the first time in nearly a month. One line, "Can we talk?" I said yes. She came over. No explanations, no pleasantries. She sat down and didn't smile. Her voice was low when she spoke. I don't know what that was. I didn't mean for it to go that far. But it did. And now I can't pretend I didn't feel something. She looked at me, eyes tired. But I can't be the reason someone else's life explodes. I asked her if she missed me. She didn't answer. Then she said, I don't regret it. But I can't do it again. There was no begging. No pleas for a second chance. Just two people sitting in the aftermath of something too fragile to hold, but too real to deny. She left quietly. I didn't try to stop her. And that silence between us, that final silence, felt like the truest ending. After she was gone, I stood in my kitchen and realized something. She didn't ruin anything. I did. Not just my marriage. Not just the illusion of being a good man. I'd ruined the version of myself that once believed I wouldn't cross certain lines. In the following weeks, things at home shifted again. My wife began to notice the distance. Maybe not what caused it, but that it was there. She asked one night, Is there something you're not telling me? I paused too long. Then I said, I think I've stopped being the person you think I am. She looked at me, and for the first time in months, really looked. Then who are you? I didn't know how to answer. We didn't split immediately. That kind of unraveling is slow. It happens through unspoken decisions. Through evenings where you don't sit together. Through conversations that die before they begin. Through mornings where no one says goodbye. The affair didn't destroy my marriage. The marriage had been quietly fading long before that. The affair just revealed what I'd been too comfortable to admit. That love isn't enough without attention. That connection doesn't survive neglect. That loyalty, without intimacy, is just a contract. Months passed. The apartment next to mine stayed quiet. One day I saw movers outside. Her door open. Boxes stacked. I never saw her again. She didn't leave a note. I didn't expect one. Now, when I walk by that door, I don't feel regret. I feel recognition. I know what I did. I know why I did it. I know what it gave me, and I know what it cost. And sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I don't replay the moments we were together. I replay the seconds before it started. The knock. The invitation. The hesitation. That was the real choice. And I made it.